Hi everybody, welcome back to episode 2 of the Solicitors series podcast. Today I'm joined by Darren and we're going to be talking to you in episode 2 about researching law firms and how you can start to think about what law firms you want to apply to when you're applying for training contracts. So hi Darren.
Hello. Yeah, so as Chloe's introduced, this is sort of the next step following on from our last episode, which was what to do in your first year. So I think researching law firms is something I did in sort of the summer between my first and second year.
Yes.
That's when I started it all off. So I think these episodes are going to work quite nicely as sort of a timeline. And that's when I sort of began my journey thinking about where do I want to apply to, what firms, what area, all that sort of stuff. So I think Chloe and I today are going to take you through our different methods of how we went about that.
Yeah.
Both of which were thankfully successful, but we did take different approaches, which I think is really nice for listeners to sort of think about how they want to do it.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, as Darren said, this is sort of, you've done your first year of uni and you're now in the summer between first and second year. Now you can relax a little bit. You've just done your exams, but it's sort of time to start thinking about what law firms you're going to want to be applying for. This is a bit unique with law because you tend to apply for your job and the end game, so your training contract, in the second year of your degree.
Yeah.
So law firms do recruit 2 years in advance. So your main aim really is to try and apply in this second year to secure your job then, so that you can go straight from undergraduate to postgraduate and then straight into a job. Obviously, some people don't want to apply in the second year or can't because of circumstances, and that's absolutely fine, but it's just what most students like to tend to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing I'm going to say before we start talking about any of this and moving on to sort of training contracts is don't necessarily think you have to get a training contract from the first application cycle. Chloe and I are, obviously we work very hard, but we're also very fortunate that we did secure training contracts in our first cycle. A lot of people, it takes a few runs, it takes a few goes, because it's tough, it's competitive, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So don't put that huge pressure on yourself that I need to secure my training contract at the very first stage, otherwise I'm no good. It's absolutely not true. I think the average qualifying age of a solicitor is 29 or 30, I think it was recently. So if, like us, you're sat here in your very early 20s, don't panic. Or if you're a career changer, also don't panic. There's no right age or time.
No.
Just do what works best for you.
Yeah, definitely. So let's start with sort of where to start with research in law firms. Now, I think research is always going to be very broad and it can always be attacked in multiple ways. And as Darren kind of mentioned at the beginning, we both used very different methods for doing this, and there's no right or wrong way. So you might hear what we've done and think, oh, I could do that. Or you might think, that doesn't work for me, I'm going to do it a totally different way. There is no right or wrong way. That's the main thing to say with this. But we're going to talk you through some of the resources that we use, some of the methods and the process, and some of the other little bits we did along the way to sort of research our law firm. So Darren, do you want to start with sort of how you sort of tackled this?
Yeah, so I think in my first year, I was, in the nicest way to me, a little bit clueless, to be honest. I remember, and I know Chloe's going to chuckle at this, sitting in one of our classes, and I turned to Chloe and I went, Chloe, what even is a vacation scheme? I had no idea about a lot of things. And that's absolutely fine. So I think after my first year, it really was sort of chucking myself in the deep end and going, right, you need to sort of work out what you're doing and where you're going. So I think my starting point, and there's no sort of paid partnership here, I just really love this little handbook. It's the lawcareers.net handbook, and they do them every year. A lot of campuses have some physical copies, but you can just find it online. And what this handbook is it discusses pretty much every single practice area in law, and it has a comprehensive guide of all the law firms. I think it's England and Wales. It may be the UK, but don't quote me on that, but it's definitely England and Wales. And so that was my jumping off point. I sort of sat with that book and went, right, what do I want from a legal career? I knew I wanted to move to London. I knew I wanted to sort of work for a commercial firm, but I didn't quite know what practice areas I was looking for. So that was my starting point, flipping through that. And I started sort of highlighting the firms that were sort of meeting those criteria. And from there, I sat down and I thought, right, let's actually write down a list of what I want. And I physically did this. So I went on Word and I made a little list of, I want a career in London. I want this sort of salary range, but salary won't be a huge sort of deal breaker for me. I want the firm to offer these areas of law. I want an international secondment to at least be offered. And I popped down all those factors. And then from there, I could go back to that sort of book and other resources and begin making a list of firms. That was my jumping off point, really. Do you want to sort of talk about how you sort of went from your starting point, Chloe?
Yeah, so as Darren said, I was pretty clueless as well. I think the technique that I chose is I booked a careers appointment with our careers service. So as we've mentioned at ULaw, they have a designated careers manager for every campus who meets you in your first week at uni and kind of actively encourages you to get involved with them. And I'm sure other unis have careers teams as well, and their job is basically to help you secure your job at the end of uni. So I booked an appointment with them, went along, had a chat about what I was interested in, what was important to me. So as Darren just mentioned, I think one of the most important things when you're researching law firms is to have a bit of self-reflection and make a list of your priorities and what you want.
Yeah.
And there's no way you can really do this. You've really got to self-reflect. You've really got to think about, okay, well, what is important to me? And it's going to be totally different from me to Darren, from us to you. It's going to be different. So for me, location was really important. So I didn't want to move to London. I wanted to stay where I've grown up. So that was really important to me. Some of the areas I wanted to work in, I'd started to think about that in my first year. So I wanted to make sure that the firm practiced in those as well. So, your priorities are going to be different to our priorities. So that's one of the first things you have to do. But I went along to my careers appointment, told them all of this, and obviously they are the pros. So they have a lot of connections with the local law firms and with the national law firms, and they are able to suggest to me some law firms that might have matched my priority list. So I came away with probably about a list of 10, and I sort of started from there. So I then started to go into deep dive into those firms because I knew that they kind of matched my priorities. So if you really don't know where to start and you think, I just need a helping hand, I would definitely recommend reaching out to your local careers team as well. So
yeah. No, that's absolutely right. I think when Chloe sort of said that sort of list of 10, that's essentially where I ended up as well. But I guess I took a little bit more of a long-winded route about it because I sort of went with that sort of book and other resources and sort of, I think I had a list of about 50 firms. It's ridiculous that I thought, yeah, you all look great. And then from there, I took that list and started whittling them down by doing a bit of further research, so going on their websites, reading things, thinking, actually, they don't quite offer what I'm looking for. And then I came to that sort of list of 10. And that's a question I get asked sort of if I attend events, things, how many firms should I apply to? There really isn't a magic number, but I think Chloe and I both settled on about 10. I think that's a really nice, manageable number because you want to be making quite tailored, in-depth applications. You want to be able to know why you're applying to each and every firm.
Yeah.
So if you are sort of trying to do sort of 30 plus applications, I'm not saying you're not going to succeed because there's no way of me knowing that, but it's just you're going to make it more difficult for yourself. So there's no magic number, but 10 worked for us, and that's all we'll say.
Yeah, and also it's just really important to bear in mind that most of these law firms, not all, the big submission dates for these applications is December, January in your second year. So you are going to be studying. It's going to be Christmas. You're going to be preparing for your January exams alongside doing all of these applications. And these applications, we're going to talk about it in episode 3, so tune in for that one. But they take time. They take, you've got to put a lot into them. So we found that number worked for us with our other commitments in life. But there is no magic number. So once we had sort of our list of 10, 15, ish firms we wanted to apply for, we then started to deep dive into a bit more research. And I just wanted to highlight some of the resources that I used for doing this. There are so many, and there are literally companies that are dedicated to and websites that are dedicated to doing this for students. So I think Darren already mentioned lawcareers.net. He used the handbook. They also have a website where they have sort of profiles of each law firm. Other great ones to check out are Legal Cheek,
Yeah.
Chambers Student, and the Legal 500. These are just the ones which I use. I'm sure there's so many more, but they tend to break down like a profile of each law firm, highlighting their key practice areas, the salary, the regular kind of working hours, what a typical day might look like as a trainee. And it's kind of the best way you're going to get an insight into those law firms, despite actually going in and getting behind those doors, because you just can't get an insight otherwise, really, can you? So these are really great resources, and I would definitely recommend checking them out when you're doing your deep dive research.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, like Chloe said, once you've got that list, it's about trying to use as many resources as you can to find a bit more about the firm. And then once you've sort of done that, try and then look at attending events with the firm. And I think people often get stuck and they're like, well, they only offer open days once a year, blah, blah, blah. Well, that may be true, but I think Chloe and I managed to get around this is because a lot of sites like Legal Cheek and Bright Network offer sort of virtual events. So in that summer, Chloe and I attended I think it's the online Legal Cheek vacation scheme. There was a Bright Network, commercial law internship that we both did, and these are all free to apply for. They let on, I don't know if there is actually a number of applicants they stop at, but there was quite a few hundred people, so it's a really good chance you'll get onto those schemes. And you can do them from the comfort of your own home, so there's no cost to you, and that way you can interact with firms through things like that. But alongside those, they do online law fairs. I attended an evening with the firm Bird & Bird, all about their aviation practice, which is what I'm interested in, so that was amazing. But again, that was a free webinar that the firm offered. So there are so many things that you can get involved with. So once you've got that list of 10, it's then a really good time to attend those events, talk to the graduate recruitment and ask some questions. And I think when you're in those events, try and find out something about the firm you couldn't find out on their website. Is a really good piece of advice I was given. So don't go onto these events and sort of ask, how many trainees do you take on a year? Or something that is generally you can find out with a quick Google. It's not the end of the world if you do, but try and find something out that's sort of unique about the firm that you could even pop in an application then. I think Chloe will agree with me on that point, won't you?
Yeah, definitely. And as Darren said, a lot of the websites, so in particular, the one that stands out for me is Legal Cheek. They do a lot of sort of webinars and online virtual events, which you can join, after uni from home. And it's really about getting that foot in the door with those law firms. You can also sign up to their mailing lists as well, so you can get sort of advertised when these events are coming up. And I found my diary the other day from when I was actually in second year, and oh my gosh, there was just sort of events every other evening I was attending with TLT, Burgess Salmon, Mitchell Moores, all of the firms which I was applying for, about all sorts. But it's just about, preparing some questions as well when you go along, so that you stand out. You're not just sort of sat as a name on a Zoom call. You can really try and engage. And it also taking notes from these. So I think when you're then applying to the law firms, if you can take the notes or the names of the speakers and weave that into your application, again, we'll talk about this in more detail in the next episode, but if you can sort of name drop and link yourself to the firm and what you've learned from that, it's a great way to do it. So and as Darren also said, law fairs. So Legal Cheek do online law fairs, but also your uni. So I know ULaw do national and regional law fairs on their campuses, and I'm sure all other unis do law fairs as well. But that's a great place because they're back in person now since COVID. So it's a great place to actually go and network with these firms. They often send graduate recruitment and trainees, so you can have a chat to both. And it's just a great place to go along and talk. And I remember me and Darren actually went to our first law fair when we were in first year, and we were so nervous. We were just little first year students. We didn't really know what to say, but we went in, we had a chat to people, and it's just about sort of making those connections and being memorable as well. So definitely take the plunge and go to a law fair in person if you can, because you won't regret it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember it might have even been in this classroom or one of them where we were sort of stood and we sort of had to give ourselves a little pep talk to go and get the confidence to go and talk to the firms. But yeah, it's really worth it to engage in those events. And if you are at a virtual event, sometimes there are just quite a lot of people on those events, but if you can pop on screen and ask graduate recruitment a question, sort of with your mic and camera, it really does help you stand out and help you to become memorable. I think my other tip for this as well is after events, if you have met graduate recruitment and you've spoken to them, you can reach out to them by just connecting on LinkedIn. And what I did is after events, say with Clyde & Co, I just message the graduate recruiter at the time and just say, hi, thank you so much. This is a great event. Kind regards, Darren. So it was just a quick message that they could sort of read in a few seconds. I didn't want to send paragraphs, but it just showed that I was engaging. And hopefully when my application came in, I don't know this, but hopefully they could put sort of a name to a face. So I guess this is what it's all about, really, is just sort of helping yourself stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think a few little tips aside from that is when you're attending these events, it might be your first time, you might be nervous, but it's just important to remain professional because these are your first impressions with the firms. And these are the guys that could be giving you the job at the end of the day. So just being professional, dressing appropriately, things like that. Just, you might kind of forget them, but it's important to make sure those little things are in check as well, because this is your first impression and first impressions do count. So I think that's quite important as well. So yeah, we've kind of covered off attending events and networking, the methods and resources that we use for researching our law firms. As we said, this is kind of the next natural step after first year, in that summer between first and second year, that you will take in sort of getting where you want to be.
So a further point I wanted to mention, and I know Chloe and I both have experience of this, is I often get asked sort of, should I reach out to people on LinkedIn, or people have messaged me asking for, for a quick call to chat about something. And I think it's absolutely a resource that's there, and definitely use it. I think LinkedIn etiquette, however, is really important. So if you are going to reach out to a trainee or an associate or even a partner, firstly, have you actually interacted with them before? If you have, you can probably be a little bit more casual, and it's going to be easier to reach out to them. If this is someone you're reaching out to for the first time because perhaps they work at a firm you're interested in, just make sure you're structuring it almost like an email. So, hi, my name is, introduce who you are, and then sort of why you're messaging. So I'm interested in XX practice area because my job is this, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's all about really showing that personal connection. Because I have had a few messages on LinkedIn about people wanting to talk about Clyde & Co, which have just sort of been very brief or not very targeted. And it's not necessarily rude, but it doesn't really give me a clear picture of why they want to sort of nab half an hour of my time on a video call. So whilst I'm still a student, if you're reaching out to a lot of these lawyers, they are very busy. So just bear that in mind. But I thought that's just a point to mention, that LinkedIn can be a really valuable resource. But just think about targeting your messages. Don't sort of spam 10 trainees at the firm. Reach out to one or two people that you really think can help you with whatever query it might be, whether it's an area of law, etc. And hope you get a response. And then the other thing which I wanted to add in earlier, which I completely forgot to add, about resources. So this was sort of at the beginning of the podcast. One of the things I got involved with as an LGBT candidate was an organisation called Aspiring Solicitors. So they help people from various diverse backgrounds, whether that's BAME or if you have a disability or LGBT or anything like that. You can get involved with Aspiring Solicitors, and their aim is to help increase diversity within all areas and all levels of the legal profession. So I did quite a few events with them. I did a Pride event, which was hosted by Reed Smith, and I actually ended up then getting a vacation scheme with Reed Smith. I'm trying to think of the other things I did with them now. I remember I did some sort of a few days internship, but it was a really great organisation that really helped me. And they also offer exclusive work experience schemes for members of Aspiring Solicitors. So they partner with things like Network Rail, In-House Counsel, Barclays, all sorts of things. And that changes every year. So if you do think you identify with one of these backgrounds, just give them a Google. It's free to sign up. It costs you nothing, but it is going to help you by getting involved in all these things. And I'll hand over to Chloe because I know she had points you wanted to add in?
Yeah, so again, sort of jumping back, another thing which I think is really important to mention, I think which confused me and Darren when we were researching, is types of law firms and also practice areas. So these are really foreign terms when you're kind of not well acquainted with sort of the legal sector and law firms and how they work. But there are lots of different types of law firms. So I'm going to attempt to sort of go through some of them for you, but it's a case of Googling them and getting to grips with what type of law firm you want to be applying to as well. So in the UK, you've got the Magic Circle law firms. So these are big London, mostly London-based law firms, and they're kind of the biggest in the UK, I would say. Below that, you have the City London law firms. So law firms like Bird and Bird, Clyde and Co. are the London City law firms where Darren's going to be working as well. You then move down to sort of your regional city law firms. So me and Darren, our local city is Bristol. So you've got Burgess Salmon, you've got Womble Bond Dickinson, which have big presence in the city there. You then have your regional law firms. So again, pulling from Somerset, because that's our local area, you've got Ashfords, you've got Mitchell Moores, where I'm going to be working, and places like that. And then you move down to your more high street and boutique law firms as well. So it's really important to consider what sort of working environment and what sort of firm you want to apply for as well. So when we made our priority lists, I knew that I wanted to stay regional. So I didn't even consider Magic Circle or London firms, but Darren wanted to move to London. So it depends what pool of law firms you're going to be applying to and what your priorities are, I think, as well. And the other sort of dual aspect to that is practice areas as well. So often it's quite confusing because the way that law firms will brand themselves on their websites is different to the way that they actually work in reality. So on the websites, you'll have different sectors that they operate in. And this is a real marketing term, and it's not actually a reflection of the teams which they actually have and how the teams interlink actually within the law firm. So it's definitely a case of researching this. So you'll often see that they might have like the real estate sector, but really in reality, when you go inside a law firm, that's really broken down into a multitude of teams which work across a multitude of different practice areas as well. So it's definitely worth researching that and getting clued up about it before you go to interviews and do your applications as well. Pulling back to sort of once you've got your list of law firms you want to apply to, another thing which me and Darren did, which was really beneficial, was get involved with some mentoring. Now, we both applied via Grow Mentoring, which is a free service, but that you can also get mentoring through your uni. I know ULaw offer it, and other universities will offer it as well, or other sort of providers. So what we sort of did is once we had the firms we wanted to apply to, we applied to have a mentor each. And we got them, and they were from law firms which we both wanted to apply to. So Darren had a Clyde and Co mentor,
which is brilliant,
which was amazing. I was applying to Burgess Salmon, and I got a trainee in Burgess Salmon as well. And they gave you that really invaluable insight into what it's actually like behind the closed doors of the law firm. And they helped us with our applications. We had calls before our interviews, before our assessment centres and things. So I would really, really recommend getting involved with that if you can as well.
Yeah, I think the other just small point I want to add on, sort of bringing back to when Chloe was talking about different types of firms. If you're just starting off on this journey, don't be sort of drawn in by these flashy terms or big offices. Really find the place that you're going to enjoy, because if you're going into law, you're going to be spending 40 plus hours a week with that firm. So you want to enjoy your career.
Definitely.
Don't just look at big flashy salaries, because it's not the end of the game.
But yeah, I hope you found this useful. And please sort of tune into the next one when we're going to be talking about actually the applications to law firms. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Chloe.